not saying that last night at the club went really bad, but I got this woman mad at me. And she wasn't borderline psychotic. She was way over the border. It all started with me criticizing the Cayman. If there's one thing you don't want to do is don't criticize a Cayman owner. They are absolutely passionate about these cars.
Very, very passionate. And I mean, I have buddies that have them, and you know, some of the rare edition ones like the Speedsters and stuff, and they're very cool, but yeah, you definitely don't want to go down that road with a very enthusiastic Porsche Cayman owner.
And I don't understand it because well, I guess if you were into the whole James Dean, because he had the real small Boxster type thing, which is kind of what the Cayman plays off of, what he was racing in. So it has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But holy cow, this thing is expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it starts at $141,000, which is about 20 grand cheaper than the new GT3. And I can't see spending that kind of money on a mid-engine, which is, let's just call it what it is, and I'm going to get probably shot for this, but the poor man's Porsche?
Oh,
even though this is not
that's definitely going to get you beat up. I don't really know who he is, so if we are around, don't throw me under the bus on that one. But there is a problem with this car because it starts at $141,000, but you can throw so many options on this thing and get this to an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's unbelievable. As a matter of fact, there's an option on this car that they'll paint your key fob for $540. And I don't know if you know or not, but I can go out on a date and I can go around the world a couple of times for that kind of money. And I think that's better spent money. But you can spend a lot of money on this car, and I don't see it because for 20 grand more, you're in a 911.
Yeah, you're in a 911 GT3, brand new, which is beautiful. And this is actually sharing that same engine as GT3, which is great. But I mean, just speaking of options, the Weissach package, which we'd seen on a lot of the other GT, you know, the GT3 RS, even the 918 Spider, $13,000 option.
Now you're getting into Z06 territory because I honestly think that the Z06 is going to land right in this range.
No, you're kidding me? The Z06 are saying it's going to start like around $85,000.
No, there's no way that'll be that low. It's going to have to be much higher than that. But either way, if you have the choice between this or a Z06 and you pick this over the Z06, then you have to be, you know what you need?
Drug tested immediately?
If you have, everybody's seen that cartoon where the big rabbit hits you over the head with a shovel. Somebody needs to send that rabbit over to your house because if you spend that kind of money on this car, I think you're crazy.
And the only way I see spending this kind of money is if you're really, really huge into Porsches, which I know there's a lot of those guys out there. So this, to me, is something that's sitting next to your GT3 RS or your GT2 RS. This is something that you want to take out because it's a fun little commute to work. Instead of taking the motorcycle, you're going to take this. That's the only way I can see this.
And when you say that, it sucks because I still do get the attraction for the Cayman because if you take a look at the tack, like the tack's in the center of the console right there, right dead center, and it's the same font that they used on the 917.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can get the feel of being in a real race car. It's really light. It's a 3,200-pound car.
Speaking of race car, titanium roll cage, which I'm sure that's not cheap.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of really cool stuff on this thing. And when I saw the roll cage, I said, wow, I mean, that's pretty serious. And that's not a playing around cage.
No.
That looks real, real serious. And I will drink to that.
Cue whiskey, girl. We're seeing with this Cayman is that it's actually 3 kilograms lighter than the GT3, and we're actually looking at a Nürburgring of 7 minutes and 4 seconds, which is, I hate to say it, 6 seconds slower than the GT3. So again, for that $20,000 difference of starting MSRP, which one are you going for?
I read that they were about 9 seconds apart from a GT3, but it's still 24 seconds faster than a GT4. So it's extremely quick.
Right.
So no doubt about it. I mean, if you're running 7.0s at the ring, And 7.0's at the ring with only 490 horsepower.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that the C8 Corvette, the Stingray, I bet you that can't run a 705 at the ring with the same exact horsepower.
I'd be interested to see what that does.
Yeah, I really would be too. I do love the Pdk transmission. When that first came out, everybody hated the Pdk. Everybody was manual this, manual that.
It was awful when it first came out.
Well, Tony's driven a lot of Porsches, and I owned one for a while, but it was a stick. And I enjoyed the manual transmission.
Oh, yeah.
And I had my 911. I just loved that car. It handled fantastic. The engine sounds amazing. See,
9,000 RPM redline on this too.
Darn it! I keep trying to criticize this Cayman, and then I just remember how amazing that engine sounds.
It's a very enthusiastic, track car. You go to something that's a really enthusiast car that you like to take to the track and enjoy, just like anything else that you would. But this is also, you have to think about with this one is that, I mean, even with the top speed and all the lightness to it, you're still looking at a lot of money for this.
Well, but the thing is about this thing is it does have that engine sound, and all of its face holes are in the right spot. But I mean, you're right as far as in looks of it, it's sexy, but it's office girl sexy.
And how are you going to have this aggressive track car and it be a track car that you want to take there, but which redundant, I know. But how are you going to do that and not put a manual transmission in this?
Well, because honestly, if you take a look, like my Ferrari 458's not a manual transmission, but the way that the paddle shifter works and everything else, you can downshift and control the car and yaw the car. Because like on my road course cars, I will turn and then downshift, and I'll actually use the clutch to help add rear brake to help steer the car. If my front tires start getting hot, I'll rear steer it by you just lifting the clutch out. So I mean, you can do that same type of stuff with this. So technology's changing, and I get that, and there's a lot of cool stuff in this, but I noticed this doesn't have, there's no rear steer. There was no way to even set up an electric differential in this thing, so it's got a mechanical differential, which I do my own rear ends in my race cars because I have like a certain amount of preload and stuff that I like and a feel that I like, so I'll modify my own anyways, and they're more predictable to me. Not that I dislike an electrically controlled differential, but I definitely like a manual differential because I find it something that I can predict all the time. So that's cool. So everybody slams, oh, it doesn't have the electric differential. It doesn't have that, but once you get the feel of the car and you know what the car does every single time with the mechanical, you can drive it. It may not be as fast, but it will be much more enjoyable because the car is more predictable. And because it's more predictable, you can drive it at the edge of the tire all the time.
Yeah, and I'm also surprised this doesn't have some type of active aero to it. I mean, this has manually adjustable wings. Even the front splitter is manually adjustable, so you have to get down there and torque things.
I do notice that on this car that the rear wing, of course, they're hanging the wing from the top now, so that you get the bottom. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are really pretty. But did you notice that the rear wing doesn't hang off the back of the car? They must have the body so dialed in, and it's Porsche, so they probably do, that they don't need the leveraging. So they can actually use the wing for just downforce, not leveraging the car.
Yeah, because that's what they're saying, it's a mid-engine compared to the GT3, which is a rear engine. So that's also, helping this within, and that's why it's pushed forward.
Honestly, and I get it that it's cool that it doesn't overhang for the functionality of it, but it looks cooler if it does.
Yeah. And what else looks cool on this thing too is those side intakes that are like in the rear window. Only time I've ever seen that again was like in the Porsche, the Singer Porsches, so they're doing that like their higher end models.
Yeah.
That intake there is really neat to me. I like that.
There are a lot of cool intakes, and they got the top fender extractors and everything else. There's a lot of really cool stuff on this car. And I still, once again, we come back to the center lock hubs. You're not racing in your garage, quickly changing your tires and putting them back on. That's just on there for looks.
Yeah, and you might want to felt line your lug nut that you're taking those off because you will scratch those.
Yeah, that's going to leave a mark. Humongous brakes on this thing.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So
and magnesium wheels are an option, which is pretty cool.
I don't know if you know or not, but if magnesium catches on fire, it does not stop burning. So if you do flatten a tire,
with the lighter next year.
If you do flatten a tire, because I've had flats running my road course cars before, and you set them things down on the pavement, and they start scraping and throwing off all those sparks, and you catch that magnesium wheel on fire, is it going to stop burning? Magnesium, from what I understand, doesn't stop burning, so that tire is going to catch the whole car on fire. So I'm not a humongous fan of magnesium for a tire, but I've seen magnesium wheels on dragsters go flat, and they scraped, but they didn't catch fire. So they probably figure something out on that.
You know what I love about this too? This is another classic example of Porsche's going to give you less and charge you more. You don't have door handles, you have door pulls, a little piece of ribbon that you can pull on. The Gorilla Glass is thinner. There's less sound deadening, or maybe none at all. And they're going to charge you a lot more than the Cayman.
I was really surprised, and he talks about that thinner glass, and I had never noticed that before, but when I went to buy a McLaren, I opened the door and then realized how the window was down, and I saw how thin that glass was on the door, and I said, why does that not just break? It's almost paper thin anymore. Yeah. You know, I mean, you go from like my old Camaro in the Trans Ams, I got some old muscle cars that I beat around in too, and the glass is 1/4 of an inch thick. You know, it looks bulletproof compared to this stuff. Yeah. And they just keep getting thinner and thinner on the glass, and after a while, I don't think that's going to offer you very much protection, because quite honestly, I've driven down the road before. I was driving around down the road in my Escalade one day, and a big old board come flying up and hit the side of my window and just hit me right next to my head. And of course, it bounces off because the Escalade glass is super thick. Yeah. I guarantee you, on that McLaren, it would have come in and hit me.
Well, do you know where Gorilla Glass is? You know, you use a lot in. In cell phones. So like your Android devices, not so much iPhones, obviously, but your Android devices. That's what the Gorilla Glass was used heavily within those devices. So that's why, I mean, if you think about how many times you drop your phone and it shatters and it spiderwebs, but it's very thin because it's got to feel your touch, the heat from your fingers and stuff. So that's the technology that's using it there too.
Do you hear an alarm going off? Well, I think we've all been there before. We're driving down the road and we see that scene and we think immediately of the Dukes of Hazzard. If you get a chance to check out our Bo Duke episode on our page as well, it's a pretty interesting characterization of me being a character. But this car is one of those cars that would inspire this type of driving. Because it does. It has all of the things that you need to have a proper performance car. It's got big killer brakes. It's got a roll cage in it. And it's Porsche, so you know you're going to be able to beat on it lap after lap after lap. So I mean, it has everything that you need for that type of driving, but I don't know if people are really going to do that.
I mean, I think they are. Instead of taking their GT3 RS or their GT2 RS to the track, they're going to take their less expensive GT4.
I don't like on this car the fact that when you look at the back of it, it has that fake diffuser in there.
Do you think it's fake? Because they say it's active.
With underneath. It may look active to it, but it's way too far off the ground. I mean, it looks to be quite high. Yeah. You know, I mean, if you take a look at like my 458 sits about 4.5 inches off the ground. The McLaren sits about 3.5 inches off the ground. When I follow that McLaren, it sucks up everything off the road and throws it 10 feet in the air. Right. You follow my Ferrari, which also has a diffuser in the back, and it drives over that stuff, and it doesn't even lift it off the ground.
It's very courteous of your
I know, right, but it's very interesting what an inch makes for making that thing function.
That's what she said.
Well. I don't even want to go there. The thing about that is, they've learned in Formula One, that it's about at the 3-inch mark where all that underactive aero stops working. You start getting above that height and it stops working. So you've got to stay around 3.5 inches for that stuff to work. And you start getting up to 4.5 like the Ferrari is, and it's just not that effective. Yeah. But the car does have some cool stuff on it. I mean, it's got more downforce. What did they say? About 25% more downforce than the other car.
The GT4,
so it's got really good potential to be a great car. I just think that if they really were to work on this, it just needs. It's too small.
It just needs to be a GT3.
Yeah,
it just needs not to be this.
And I'm just trying to talk myself into this car, and I can't, because there's a lot of cool, sexy things about it. I love the 10 grand tack. I love the fact that it looks like the 917. The interior layout is proper. It's not amazing or stunning interior. It's just a proper interior layout. There's a lot of cool stuff on this car, but I just, you know me with small cars, I just can't get over them. I don't like them.
Yeah, I'd rather, like to your point, I'd rather have a Z06 instead of this, but I get it. It's neat. And another cool thing, too, is that when you order this car, you can actually order a watch to match your car for this GT4 RS, and it has the same VIN number as your car. So kind of a cool collector's piece. Make sure that you check that if you buy one of these
All
used. That you
right,
get a watch
I've had
with it.
enough. I think it's time. I hear a squealing noise. We've talked about this before, and I probably do need therapy for this because I just don't like small cars. And Tony loves them. I know you're a big small car guy, but I have a problem with them. So I'm not going to give this thing a really good rating in styling, and I hate to say it's only because it's so much smaller. I love the look of it. I love the style of it. I like the interior layout. There's everything about this I like, and I would love it if it was 25% bigger.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like bigger cars, and this is just, it's neat because it's a fun-looking track car that you can whip around. My biggest bugaboo with this is that it's just the price that it is for what it is. I can't see spending that kind of money on this, even though it is very cool.
Wouldn't this be an amazing car if it was $98,000?
Oh, yeah, it would be
if this was
great.
A $98,000 car, and I don't know how they could ever do that, don't get me wrong, but if they could do that, or if they could make this car 3 inches wider, you know what I mean? Just
low
something
slung.
About it. Yeah, low
to really
slung.
set it apart.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Then you know
cup
what?
car, like if it was
I think
a cup
you're
car
right.
or something.
I think that if they did just simply widen this car and give it some stance, it would be worth the money.
And I've seen some pretty cool GT4, the old GT4 cars that they've done these like stances with like that, and they've wide-bodied them, and they look very cool. So I agree with you on that.
All right.
That's a good point.
They didn't widen it, so I'm going to give it a 42.
Oh, 42. Okay.
Right. It's not awful, but it's not. If it was wider, I would be much higher on this. I don't like narrow cars. I don't like small cars, and it's just not for me. I know that lady's gonna find me.
I mean, I'm already on the hit list anyways, so we'll probably both
usually
be
when I
together.
go to the bar and I get in an argument, I immediately tell everybody my name is Tony. So we're
Perfect.
We're
Awesome.
The thing about this, and I know that Tony's probably going to give this a higher than normal rating because he doesn't have such an aversion to smaller cars, but I really think that my 42 should be the boss here. And I think that if I can talk you into agreeing with me for one time on something, I think this is the time that I really need to push you to agree with me on a number.
So my Porsche buddies are probably going to hate me, but I would agree with you. I mean, I was actually 5 points higher than that.
Okay.
I was at a 47, but I can bring it down. I can knock it down. The only reason why actually styling-wise, that I'm giving it that with the Weissach package is just...
Oh, you're going Weissach. But the thing
is
that the C8 is about the 45, 47 range, and I just don't think it's as good looking as a Stingray. You see what I mean? I think that it's a little bit...
As a Z06, no. But
I'm not talking Z06, because Z06 is a whole different game.
But we're partial.
Right.
We're American through and through. So I mean,
and I also know that I have the aversion to the small cars. In performance goes, I think that it's... And I compared it to the C8 earlier. I think that it's similar in performance to the C8, and I think it's actually a little bit better. Because I guarantee you that the Stingray C8 with the same power can't go around the ring as fast as this went around the ring.
No, probably not.
So I gave it a little better rating in performance. I didn't give it a lot better rating, but I gave it a little better at a 47.
Oh, okay, so we're not too far off, and I agree with you on that. But again, even though it might beat the C8, you can buy 2 C8s and still have money left over with when you go to buy one of these. So the reason why I gave it a 50 as far as performance, and the reason why I gave it that is because it does share the same engine as the GT3, and 0 to 60 3.2 seconds, 196 mile an hour top speed, and that Nürburgring time. You have to give it credit where credit's due. So I gave it a 50.
And on that, because I do want to drink, I'm going to give him a toast. What are you thinking?
I'll give it a toast.
All right. Congratulations, Porsche. You accomplished what you wanted to do. Congratulations. Well, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. And you know what they say, if you have an opinion that's different than ours, keep it to yourself.